Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, your host, and for today's episode, I sat down with Sarah Kennedy, a trailblazer who went from veterinary medicine to founding Calocurb. We dove into the science behind Calocurb, a breakthrough plant-based supplement derived from hops that naturally reduces appetite by supercharging your body's own hunger-suppressing hormones like GLP-1. Sarah shared how Calocurb is helping people regain control over cravings and why it's a powerful science-backed alternative or complement to popular medications. This was a super interesting conversation on cravings and how our hormones affect our hunger and cravings. And it's especially super interesting to learn from Sarah if you're interested and fascinated by all that is going on in the GLP-1 space. So let's do this. Let's get listening. And if you love this episode, please remember to rate, review, and share. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, a celebrity registered dietitian nutritionist. Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Welcome, Sarah, to the podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today. We're going to talk about a very hot topic in the world of nutrition and wellness right now. So welcome.
Thanks, Keri. It's great to be on.
So, okay. Tell us a little bit about your background, because I know that you have a background in farming and as a veterinarian. So how did that lead you to where you are now? I just want to set the scene for everyone a little bit. So we have sort of like, again, the background, because you've done some amazing things.
Thanks. Well, yeah, I think as you read, I graduated as a veterinarian and practiced for 5 years, actually in both large animals and small animals. But quite quickly, after 5 years, I moved into nutrition. And actually, in my first role in nutrition, I actually specialized in aquaculture. So I did the salmon here in New Zealand and the shrimps up in Noumea, which is one of the Pacific Islands, or French Polynesia. And I then sort of morphed more into nutrition. And then I moved from animal nutrition into human nutrition, and sort of go forward a few years, I became the CEO of probably an iconic but small health and wellbeing company, it was a health and wellbeing company here in New Zealand. And we grew that over the next 10 years to be the third largest in Australasia. So really then focused in human nutrition.
How did you go from animals to humans? Like I mean, I'm sure it could be a whole podcast on its own, but I'm really curious. Like, how did you make that move?
Yeah, interesting. I will say to you that through veterinary school, we are taught a lot more in nutrition than doctors ever are. And the reason being
I'm not surprised. Why am I not surprised, actually?
Because animals, well, particularly production animals, you're always looking at how you can gain the best either best performance if it's a horse,
Hmm.
or the best body composition if it's a production animal. You know, if
Hmm.
it's a cow, you want the best milk and you want the largest amount of milk. And this is about the best nutrition, best environment, and best nutrition for an animal. You know, but take a performance animal like a horse. You want it to be, you're going to have to do the right amount of exercise, the right amount of nutrition. So I always say my background as a veterinarian gave me a sort of a perfect platform for humans. And then through a series of things, I moved into the human side, which I've been in for, oh goodness, the last 30 years now. So and although people say, oh, how do you understand when an animal's sick? I always think animals are easier because and don't take this the wrong way, but an animal never lies to you. You know, an animal, you can always tell it. You know, if you say to a human, you know, have you been eating correctly? They'll go, oh, yes. You know, but you can tell when an animal isn't it. You say to a human, have you been drinking? Oh, no. And, you know, all of these things.
Right.
But, you know, an animal, you know, well, either their owner will tell you, but you can tell by when you examine them. So animals are not as hard as everyone thinks they are.
Super interesting. Okay, so then you moved into human nutrition. You grew this, you said, this iconic nutrition brand in New Zealand. And then from what were you doing there? And then what led you to do the research?
Calocurb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
So I was with them for 11 years. We grew them from 25 to 200 million. So the third largest. I was a CEO. So I was a pretty young CEO at that time, but we had an enormous amount of fun. I then very luckily went and did my Sloan Fellowship in Boston at MIT.
Oh,
So
wow.
I took 18 months off and did my Sloan Fellowship. I came back and I actually joined a company called Fonterra, which is the largest company here in New Zealand. It's about $22 billion, and it is all dairy. And I ran a number of ones, but I actually ran the R&D, so the research and development. And extraordinary in those times, I had $100 million in R&D, which was a lot of money, but we had a lot of scientists, so you had to really allocate what you did in. And so we did a lot in proteins and, you know, in muscle gain and so on like that. But in 2017, by someone who had actually worked with me, I was presented the science for Calocurb. It didn't even have a name then. Let's just call it Product X because we didn't have a name. But I was presented the science. And I had
And
never...
who presented the science to you? Someone that was researching amarasate?
Yes, so amarasate being the active ingredient, they'd worked with me previously in another role, but they were then at the Government Research Institute, which
Okay.
I'll talk about, and they were a business development manager. And in New Zealand, most primary research almost all primary research is done by the government, which is quite different from other places. And then the scientist will get it to a certain point, and then they'll go, this can be commercialized. How should we commercialize it, and who should we commercialize it with? So I was presented the science, and a bit like the man, I liked the company so much I bought it. I'd never seen science like it. I absolutely, and it sort of goes back to a personal reason as well, but I was presented the science in 2017, and after some discussions, I said, oh, I love it. I want it. So
well, they originally presented it to you because there were these researchers, and from what I have read about it is that they were researching amarasate as well as other hops, and how they may be able to help appetite. They've been researching it for 15 years, and
yeah,
is that
interesting.
correct?
Yes, a little bit. It is just slightly. In 2010, a group of very talented scientists in a research institute owned by the government, one of the largest, had a hypothesis that they would find a natural plant-based extract that suppressed appetite. Now, there were historical reasons for that. In times of famine, bless you, in times of famine, Scottish people chewed very, very bitter berries to suppress hunger. In the Kalahari Desert, tribesmen chewed very, very bitter cactus before they went out hunting. In fact, that was the original extract hoodia, which some people may remember. So they had that. They had some very early work done on animals. So they had a hypothesis in 2010. They put in for a government grant. They got $20 million back to study this. So food for appetite control. They did some extraordinary stuff. They took biopsies right down from humans, right down the intestinal tract. That's a whole story in itself, but they got 300 biopsies and actually proved that we have what we call bitter taste receptors. So on our tongue, we have bitter taste receptors, but no one had ever mapped them right down through our stomach and through our intestinal tract. So what do these bitter taste receptors do? They're actually an evolutionary trait. We developed them because if you eat something bitter, it's often associated with toxic. So we grew these bitter taste receptors to protect us. So if you eat something bitter and you put it on your tongue, you'll spit it out. But if it goes, say it's coated and it goes into your stomach, what's going to happen then? What happens then is you'll usually feel nauseous and you may vomit it up. But if it goes into your digestive system, so past your stomach, it's no good. You can't vomit it up. So what it actually does is it stimulates these bitter taste receptors to release our appetite suppressing hormones. So CCK and GLP-1 and PYY, 3 appetite suppressing hormones, because they go up to your brain and say, stop eating. This could be poisonous. So it's an evolutionary protective mechanism for us. What happened? So they mapped out these bitter taste receptors. They then proved that they could get them to express these appetite suppressing hormones. Then they tested over 1,000 natural extracts. So absolutely everything. And only 2 were potent enough to release these. And that's understandable, because if we released appetite suppressing hormones all the time, you'd drink a cup of coffee and you wouldn't eat. They've got to be quite potent. So one of them was a potato oxalate, which is great, but it's poisonous. So you may not eat, but you'd be dead. The second one is...
That's not good. You don't want that.
No. The second one was a hops. So hops is what's used to flavor beer. So this was sort of the eureka. So they then tested 50 more varieties of hops to get the absolute one. And then they got that. They did masses of other in vitro tests and so on. They formulated, they put it into a capsule and so on like that. They tested, scientists always test things on themselves. It's quite funny that they did that. Lots of funny stories with that. They then took it into a human clinical, quite an extensive human clinical, where they took 20 healthy men, and they cannulated them. So they took bloods all the time from them over a period of time. And they fed Calocurb. They gave Calocurb an hour before an ad libitum meal or an eat to your full meal and snack. They then measured the bloods, and they could show in humans that we increased GLP-1, which is what people mostly know, and CCK, cholecystokinin, by 600%. Now, this is hugely statistically significant, and PYY by about 400%. So we now knew that we could do this in vitro, we could do this in humans, and we got an average of an 18% calorie reduction in food intake. So, and that in comparison is an average. If you take a semaglutide or a GLP-1 injectable, you will eat on average about 24% less a day. So we'll be 18, they're 24%.
It's pretty, that's pretty incredible. So just to go back, so when these researchers came to you, they were coming to you as CEO of Fonterra, right? And they
No, I was actually so I'd left Fonterra by that
okay,
time. I was in another CEO
okay, but you were a
of
CEO somewhere
another.
else. Yeah, but they
Yeah,
wanted you to produce. They said we had $20 million and X amount of years of research. We have these clinical trials. We've proven this. They were taking it to you because they said, okay, now we should turn this into a product though, because we've seen
what it
these
can do.
incredible results. And you said, okay, wait, I don't want to just turn this into a product. I want to found the company that turns this into a product, right? That was the next step because you were so impressed with the research.
As I said, never said. And you've got to remember that GLP-1 or Wegovy / Ozempic had not been released on the market. So
Wow.
that was in 2017. So I
Yeah.
thought, oh my God, this is extraordinary.
Yeah.
This is doing these. It's not a laxative. It's not a filler.
Mhm.
It's not a caffeine base. It doesn't make you jittery. It's all of these things. So yeah, I raised the money. I formed a team, and we launched in 2018, direct to consumer to start with. And, I think a really big learning in there was I thought I had the best mousetrap in the world and everyone would come. But, you have to explain it, like I'm doing to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Which actually, I want to explain one thing. I want to go back to one other point you made. So one, you talked about how how they tested, the researchers tested all these different hops, and then they found the potato oxalate, and then they found the other one being amarasate. So I just want to clarify so people understand. So amarasate is the hops that does go, you ingest it and it does make it all the way down to your small intestine where it triggers it's your L cells, right? It triggers your L
Yes,
cells.
yes,
Okay, so it
yes.
triggers your L cells in your small intestine to stimulate the whole process of these appetite suppressing hormones that we all have. Many of us know about GLP-1 because we know about the GLP-1 receptor agonists, all the different medications that are available. But some people know and some people don't know that GLP-1 is just a hormone. I'm explaining this for listeners. I know you understand this, but I'm just explaining this
No,
for
it's
listeners.
great. It's great. No, I get it.
Some people don't know that GLP-1 is a hormone that we all make and is stimulated in different ways. So, but GLP-1 also isn't the only hormone that affects our appetite. There are other hormones. And as Sarah mentioned, there's CCK and PYY. And amarasate, this hops that has been studied and is now available in the form of the brand Calocurb, because you also mentioned Calocurb. I just want to connect those dots for people that Calocurb is essentially just amarasate, the hops that was researched. And that hops does trigger the release of your GLP-1, PYY, and CCK to the extent that, as Sarah also just mentioned, reduces your appetite up to reduces your caloric intake up to 18% as compared to people on GLP-1 medications that see about a 24% reduction in caloric intake. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I summarize that
No,
for everyone.
yeah,
It's connected the dots for everyone.
you're 100% right. And I was sort
Okay.
of looping all right. So just to clarify, amarasate is a specific extract or an extract from a specific hop. We
Okay.
extract it using supercritical extraction. So you're only left with, if we do have people out there going, oh, but hops, they're estrogenic. We take out all the phytoestrogens. You're only left with alpha and beta acids. You have got no phytoestrogens in there at all.
Okay.
So it's a wonderful, very, very thick extract. We then send to America, where it's manufactured into these delayed release capsules. So in these little wee tiny capsules, delayed release, we put a vegetable oil with them, which helps it disseminate or disperse, and a tiny amount of rosemary. So you've got, which is a natural preservative. So you've got 3 natural ingredients in a tiny capsule, which you take an hour before a meal or whenever you think you're going to be hungry with a glass of water. It goes down and it disintegrates below the stomach in the upper duodenum, and that's where it stimulates these. So basically, we super stimulate your release of. So normally, when you eat, your GLP-1 rises to what we would say 300%, right? So I always say, think about when you eat, you're like, oh, I'm eating. Then about 45 minutes later, you go, oh, I'm really full. I wish I hadn't eaten so much. That's actually your feedback mechanism. Your food is digested, gone into your upper digestive, and you have released your own natural GLP-1, which goes up and says, hey, you better stop eating, else you're going to pop. So it's just a natural feedback mechanism. So what we do is we go in an hour before and we super stimulate them. So you get a 600% increase, which decreases. So our difference is we're working with the body in stimulation, your GLP-1. We're kind of exercising these little L cells, I kind of think about it. Where when you are on an injectable, you inject in a synthetic hormone. We stimulate your natural hormone. When you inject, it's a synthetic hormone. Now, the other difference is if it's a Wegovy or Ozempic, it will last for 7 days because it's a synthetic hormone where they have altered one of the peptides on or opened one. We are natural, but we last for 4 to 6 hours because we go down the digestion and we keep firing off these blood cells. So we last for 4 to 6 hours.
Which is much more aligned with how the body naturally works.
Well, we kind of say you don't need high GLP-1 when you're asleep. Right. Unless you're a really bad midnight snacker. But, you don't need it. So we do work with the body. Hey, we think these injectables are amazing because they are another tool in the toolkit for doctors. And they've gone away from me, which I'm the most happy about, is they've gone away from the doctrine. It's about willpower and eating. And, it's not just about willpower. And this is, I think, been one of the biggest revelations to people. We are hormones driven, and our behavior and what was an asset to us. So I'm just going to give you an example. If you reduce your calories by 25%, your hunger will double over 4 months because your body is saying to you, hey, you are going into a famine. You get out there and you go and find food.
Right.
And our hunger is driven by our hindbrain. So, this whole thing about willpower, yes, it's a it's got your forebrain.
Not a fan of willpower. Yeah.
No. You put hormones on that. You put menstrual cycles. You put stress. You put lack of sleep. You put alcohol. And your forebrain comes off and your little hindbrain goes, woohoo, we're going to eat. How many times, well, maybe you haven't, but how many times, people listening, have you eaten hot chips late at night after when you've come in? Because that is because alcohol or stress or tiredness, and I don't care, I need hot chips.
Right. So what you're saying is that amarasate, Calocurb, helps your hormones stay in a place where you don't feel that hunger. You're balancing your hormones in a way that keeps your hunger at bay.
Absolutely. So, I say it'll allow you to walk by, that muffin at morning tea. First of all, you'll eat less. You just will eat less. You'll get full faster. We're not mucking around with anything. We're just working with your body to super stimulate those release. You will also, so we did 2 further clinical trials, and one that I'm the most proud of is we did one in women. And I'm not sure how much people realize just how difficult it is, because, people do not do, only I think 30% of drugs are ever done on women and we're treated like little men. And the reason being is that we have hormones, we have menstrual cycles, and so we took 30 women and we had to line up their menstrual cycle to the exact day over 3 times and the exact day of the week. And this was during COVID. So this took about 15 months and $250,000. But what we showed, so what we did, it was a 24-hour water only fast. And we gave Calocurb at 16 hours and at 20 hours. And we showed in women that we reduced hunger by 100%. So
Wow.
at 24 hours, right, they were no more hungry than they were at 16 hours. So placebo, you're much hungrier. No.
Yep.
Calocurb, no more hungry. But we
Wow.
also measured, which I was just, I loved, was we measured craving. And we reduced craving by 120%. Now, why is that important? Craving is not hunger. It often comes from an emotional eating of craving.
Yep.
And also hormones. In your luteal cycle, on your menstrual, which is actually what we call PMS, premenstrual, that's your luteal, women will eat on average 250 calories more a day and up to 600 calories. And it's craving. Now, why do they do that? Because, it's evolution again. Once again, your body thinks you might be going to fertilize an egg, and you want to make sure everything is really fertilized. You've got a lot of, sugar and so on in carbohydrates in your body in case you do fertilize. But obviously, we're not going to fertilize an egg every month. So I always think, this is something that is just so helpful for women. We also repeated it in males. They were great. They got an 80% reduction in hunger, but women are more receptive to GLP-1 stimulation. So yes, it does reduce your hunger, and when we put that over a 24-hour period, reduces hunger by 30%, craving by 40%, and calorie intake by an average of 18%. So yeah, it's really working exactly as the injections do, but it's just your natural body.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So you mentioned how in the study, how you gave it to women at those two different time periods. I'm curious about just for the regular population using the product, how exactly you recommend taking it. Because I do know from, and it's funny, when I first heard about it, I was like, Calocurb, what is this? What is this thing, Calocurb? That doesn't sound like something I'm going to be interested in. I mean, being totally honest and transparent with you, like, as a dietitian, a nutritionist who's been helping people for all these years, I was like, what is this? And then again, I researched, I said, oh, it's just amarasate. It's just this hops. And then I started looking at some of the research on, I said, what, this is really, really fascinating and interesting. And then being my own little guinea pig, before I recommended it to anybody, I said, I'm going to try this. And I have to say, I noticed a huge difference. Now, I noticed, and this is what I'm getting to here, is I want you to explain how to use it properly, because there really is a big difference in using it properly versus just taking it, popping it with the rest of your supplements in the morning and forgetting about it. It really has to be used properly in order to reap the benefits. Because I know when I said originally, I just kind of threw it in there with my morning supplement routine, and I didn't. And that was my fault. I was just sort of trying to make it easy. And I was not, so I was like, I'm just going to give this a shot. And then I realized, okay, if I really want to see how this works, I have to actually do this really properly. So, but instead of me saying my experience here, I'd love to hear you exactly how you recommend taking it and why. I know you already mentioned, I kind of gave it away. You mentioned something about an hour, but how exactly do you have people or recommend people take it?
Well, first, thank you for looking at all the research. Of course, this has been my baby for the last 6 years. And our problem is, it's like people say to us, it's almost too good to be true.
Right.
But
well, that's what I thought when I saw it. And then also I'm looking at the name of it, and I saw that, I'm like, what is this? But anyway.
I know. But let me just tell you before I go on to tell you how to use it, is the name. It's really interesting. People come up and they're like, oh, how did you come up? Some people love it. Some people, how do you come up with such a cheesy name? Well, when you come up with a name, you can absolutely say that. But when you come up with a name, you've got to be able to trademark it globally.
Right.
So, we were thinking of mindful and all of these things, but you've actually got to have a name you can trademark. And this was one you could trademark
Yeah.
globally. So that's it. So how do you use it? Absolutely. You use it for best results. Use it an hour to an hour and a half. So I tend to pay to people like when you're having a cup of coffee, like at 10:30 or something like that, when you're taking a break, take it then, have
Mm-hmm.
an empty stomach and take it with a glass of water. Now, the reason is, you want it to bypass your stomach and go to your upper digestive. And
Mm-hmm.
if your stomach is full of food, it may get a bit mixed up in there. It's not going to harm you. It's not going to do anything. But for best, it will be when it goes to the upper duodenum. So I always say take it an hour to an hour and a half before lunch. And then depending on when you eat in the evening, take it like, if you're going to eat at 6 o'clock, take it at 5. I often take mine at about 4. If I know I'm going to eat later and I'm going to be absolutely ravenous and I'm going to have to go to a cocktail party or something like that, I'll take it at about 4. And then I know I'm going to be fine through to 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Because remember, it works for 4 to 6 hours. So it means I'm not going to get to a cocktail party and go and eat all of the canopies. So, but always take it on an empty stomach. When you first start taking it as well, we say to people, this is a biologically active product. So take it one a day for 2 days, 2 a day for 2 days, and then you can get up to your full dose, which is 2 small capsules, an hour before lunch and an hour before dinner. All of the instructions are there, but
Yeah.
it just allow your body to get used to, because you are super stimulating the release of GLP-1 and
Yeah.
other 2 hormones.
I have a couple, I think, really important questions for you. So who may this not be appropriate for?
Yeah, great question. Well, not many people, we say anyone with an inflammatory intestinal disease, so a Crohn's disease or IBD, because if your intestine's inflamed, you don't really want anything on it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'd say is 99 or it is absolutely focused on your intestinal tract.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 1% is absorbed in your blood.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, we are stimulating the natural release of GLP-1. So we're just focused on those L cells. We don't affect the liver or the kidney. So if you're on other medications, it's
Mm-hmm.
fine, because other medications almost typically are absorbed into your blood and then they're broken down in your liver and your kidneys,
Okay.
mainly your liver. So we don't do that.
So there's
So
no worries. There's no drug interaction. There's no
no.
drug interaction there. Okay. Well, what about people on type 1, type 2 diabetes?
Well, like type 1 diabetes, that is a totally different thing. You have no insulin. So I have nothing to do with that. That is a medical
I'm just
condition.
because I just think there's probably people out there listening that might be interested in that. That's why I wanted to at least ask you. Okay.
Sure, I would. Well, absolutely, you can take it with type 1, but it won't interfere with insulin,
Right.
but it's not going to
Right.
be a replacement. Also, type 2 diabetes, that is a disease. I'd say we are very good for pre-diabetics. So if your blood sugar is high,
Mm-hmm.
and your blood, because you've got insulin resistance,
Mm-hmm.
I would absolutely say, try Calocurb, because we will not so much lower your blood, well, we will lower your blood sugar immediately, but we'll certainly help you in your portion control. So in that the other thing I will say, and this is why I always say, we are incredible in people coming off the injectables.
Yeah.
So, like 12% of the
You're going right
population.
into my next question I had. I said I had two
Okay.
really important ones. No, so no, keep going and I'll see. Keep going. I like it.
Okay.
We're on the
So
same
when you're
page here.
coming, this is something I'm quite passionate about. When you're coming off the injectables, remember 12% of US people have been on or are on injectables.
Yep.
When you're coming off, whenever you are on a synthetic hormone, you depress your natural hormone, because of course your body goes, hey, I don't need to make anything. You're doing
Right.
it for me. Thanks very much. So you've taken your natural release. We've got the science on this. You've
Yep.
taken your natural release of GLP-1, and these are well, probably mainly GLP-1 because you're injecting it in. down to zero or almost zero. So when you come off, you have to stimulate, you have to re-stimulate this gut-brain axis because, and this is, we believe, part of the reason you get this rebound eating, because you come off and people are like, oh, I'm so hungry.
Right. Your
Because they've
hormones
got their own happening.
They're in a worse place than when you went on
Yeah.
medication.
So you've got to switch this back on, and that might take 1 to 2 weeks. But, you really want to keep stimulating. And it acts as this incredible, I'd say, safety net for people. And you can keep on then, when you're on an injectable, you go off food completely, right? Which is not a natural state long term. So you want to get into an eating habit, which is healthy. And this is an affordable and an effective mechanism to do this, because, it's just going to help you make wiser decisions.
Okay, so you answered part of that next question I had, but I do want to ask another part of it. What I was going to say is, what do you feel about people being on Calocurb with the shot? And then also, what about coming off? So you answered the coming off part, but what do you think about when people are on the shot? Is there any reason for people to be taking amarasate during that time?
Well, that's really interesting, because we have doctors who really, really high profile, and how they're using it. They're using it in combination, because they can, what they call, microdose on the injection. So let's say if it's a tirzepatide, you can use the starting dose, which is 2.5 milligrams, right? And you can stay on 2.5 milligrams instead of taking it up to 10. So what you're doing, so you do 2.5 milligrams a week and have Calocurb at the same time. And what you're in fact doing is 3 things. You are reducing the cost, because obviously you're taking much less of it. You're also reducing the side effects, because the side effects, you can keep the side. And then the third thing is, you're keeping your natural hormones going, or what we would call our endogenous hormones going. So you're still keeping those going. And what doctors are telling us is that day 5, people get what they call breakthrough hunger. If they've got that lower dose, they're like, oh, by day 5, I'm really hungry again. I'm really hungry again. Calocurb helps that. So they can go through to 7 days and have the next shot. So absolutely 3 ways to use it. An alternative, look, if you don't want to inject yourself, you can't afford it, the side effects, and you want something natural, and you only may want to maintain or lose a little bit of weight, in combination with the injectable. And then, of course, I'd say it's not an if, it's a must when you come off, because you want to stimulate that gut-brain axis again.
Yeah, that's where I see it being incredibly beneficial, is that, coming off of it for people, again, to start stimulating their own hormone. I can see there being such a huge role there, as well as for other people that just are not really candidates for the shot. It's not necessary, not candidates for multiple reasons.
That's right.
They want to control their, like you said, cravings, hunger, food noise, right?
Food noise. Our biggest feedback is, you take the noise out of my head. You take the noise. And, and I will go back, because when they approached me in 2017 and they presented me with this research, I will say there's a personal reason. I have had this love-hate relationship with food my whole life. I think
You're not alone. You're not alone.
But how many people say that? I think I went on my first diet when I was 10 years old. This love-hate, this dieting, yo-yo, eating, hating myself, all of those things. And this has given me peace. I take it every day. Of course I do, I'm the founder, but I love it. And that was a personal reason for me on this journey. And I'm at peace with food now. I can eat. I just don't eat as much. And I don't beat myself up all the time. And I don't have all of these. So, for me, it's been extraordinary.
Amazing. Okay, so 2 final questions for you. One, where do you see Calocurb and sort of this whole, I guess, area of the industry going? Like, what do you think's next? Are we going to see another product from Calocurb? Are we going to see another hops out there? Are we like, where do you think that's going?
Well, you know, we are a one product company, and we continue to spend, we're just going back on that. We're just completing our 4th human clinical, and that's on 150 people, men and women, BMI between 25 and 30, over 6 months with a 3-month follow-up. That's costing us $2 million. And that's finishing in July, so I should have published results in October, November. I've got my fingers, my toes, and everything crossed because it's costing a lot of money.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can do so much science, and so we will continue with that. You won't see another hops product because we're patented. So that sounds arrogant, isn't it? But we're patent. We've had our patent granted in the US, granted in Australia, and pending in New Zealand and Europe. So that shows, you know, to be patented, you have to be novel and new.
Right.
So, you know, and done. So we've spent 15 years so far, 30 million. Our science plan is already stacked for the next 2 years on things like addictive eating, just some wonderful things in that.
So you're going to focus on the research versus coming out with additional products. You're really going to focus on
you
research.
Don't need additional.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We have 4 values in our company, and the first one is science-led. So everything, and we're actually still owned by the government. So I have the worldwide rights to it. So I can't do anything. Well, you know, if you trust the New Zealand government, but I can't do anything. I can't do anything that's not fully regulated. So science-led, and our second value is customer success. So like when you said to me, you know, it made a real difference. That is, we just love hearing that because, that's what we're doing. We're actually doing it. You know, this is a personal journey for me, but it does help people's lives.
Fantastic. Okay, last question. How do you live your most nutritious life on a daily basis? What do you do to ignite your nutritious life? And you can't say take your Calocurb.
Well, no, it's a really
one other
good
thing.
Okay, it's a really good point. And I think, you know, Calocurb is a tool in a toolbox, right? I think particularly when we lead busy lives, don't beat yourself up. Just look after yourself. Sleep is the biggest panacea for anyone. Just give yourself that break. Allow yourself to sleep. That does so much for your body. And if it helps you, you know, don't beat yourself up about it. Exercise will not make you slim. It will make you strong. So particularly for older women, look at strength training. Just look, you know, don't do a huge amount. You don't have to buff up like a gym guy. You know, just do some arm training and strength training. Those are my 2 things.
I love that.
Strength training is a decrease in stress for me, and sleep is just my godsend.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was amazing. And everyone, check out the show notes. It was so nice. Sarah was so nice to give us, all of our listeners, a special code, and that is Keri10 if you are interested in trying Calocurb. So you can check out the show notes for that, or just go to calocurb.com and use the code Keri10 and you can try it out. And thank you so much. There's so much incredible science here. Like I said, I mean, that's really what got me interested in it, was reading the science. So nice to learn more about it from you. I'm really excited to see the studies that you have coming out in the next couple of years. I can't wait to learn more. So again, thank you for sharing everything with us today.
Keri, thank you so much.